closely, but for some reason the microphone cut out at certain times. And I'm hoping that that I resolved that. I'm not sure how I resolved it, but I wiggled things and shook them, and so we'll see if it works. So anyhow, I will go through and I'll edit last week's session and essentially just cut out those things that didn't have voice, and leave the rest, and try to be judicious in what I leave, because there's a lot of dead space. There's a lot of hoes and hums like that. So, all right. So this week, we're really going to do pretty much the same thing. We're going to talk about layers, cropping, and backgrounds, creating new layers. And we're also going to talk about selections, because selections is really a big deal. Who's got pretty good extensive work in selections? Everyone? Well, all right. Okay, and some. Okay, right. Because if you just go online and you Google selecting in Photoshop, what do you get? You get, I don't know, thousands of YouTube's instructions on how to, and I can't prove this, but I believe that every one of them is a different version. Everybody's got their own way of doing it. And I've got a couple, and fortunately for me, again, with my shots, and you can't really see any of my result shots here, but mine are, I take a very laid-back approach to how accurate my selections are. Okay? Some people, yeah, comment? Yeah, right, okay. Some people are very precise, and I don't know if I can get them online here. There's a guy named Adrian Summerling who creates fantasy images from his imagination by actually taking his subject. He takes his kid, and he takes his dog, and whatever else, and he puts them in a situation, in a pose, and then does this amazing selection of them, and then superimposes them and creates these scenes that literally could not happen, right? I mean, but they look absolutely real because he's taken such care, and the outlines and the edges are all perfect, and you can see the transparencies. That's not me, okay? It's not the kind of image that I'm trying to create, but it doesn't mean that.
Have you ever tried Rebuku or Retouch-Up?
Yes.
I mean, dog or people in the foreground, and next day email, and with my skill on that, some of those section tools will take me a couple hours, and it's like $1.50, and you get it, download it tomorrow or something.
Yeah, just as a service, right? Yeah. And I'm speaking about plugins here. So, for instance, ON1 has a really fantastic selection tool. Okay, part of their suite, and it allows you to to define. Okay, I want to keep this. I want to get rid of this, and it pretty much does it. Also, Topaz has a really great one. But after using all of those, what I've figured out is that Photoshop does all of those things just as well if you learn how to do it, and there's some tricks. And so we'll talk about some of those tricks. But again, YouTube is pretty fantastic if you want to waste some time and get a whole bunch of different perspectives. So what I'd like to do is, first of all, I want to talk about the sequence of making a new image, all right? And I'm actually going to take that image right there, because some images work pretty well for making composites, and some work less well. If we just look at a couple of these here, last week I think we went through this one here, right? This one, and we did some changes, and I kind of cropped it, and we were able to get a different image from it, right? We were able to make some modifications and put some layers on it and make it into an image that really wasn't the same. let's see if I have, I guess I didn't save it. Oh, we did this one, right? Did we do that one? No. Okay, well, we can do that one too. But I'll just show you where this one began, I think. Just as a reference point. All right, so if you look at these things, okay, look at this image right here, okay? And if you look at this, you recognize that. And then you'll recognize that. And you recognize that. And then you recognize this. And that's the image that I started with. Okay? So some images work much better than others. This one, for instance, I like the texture in the front. I like, the lone figure out there. That's my nephew, walking off the edge of the earth. And then a nice, pretty much clean background. So it gives you a palette to work on. We'll just use this one just for grins because I got it up here. So what I'd like to do first is we'll do some basic editing on this. And if ever, see, it worked. This time it worked. Remember last week I couldn't get the image up here and develop? And so you want to do some initial editing. Here's my histogram here. It's a little bit high on the brights, which you'd expect from that. So I'm going to actually blow that out a little bit because I know I want to work with that background. I want to replace that. So that is actually going to be what? A selection, right? We're going to select, well, we're going to select one of those areas. Maybe the background. Actually, we'll work back and forth. Shadows, can probably bring that up a little bit, deepen it. The whites, not sure. No, that's okay. Blacks, probably want to bring down. Okay. So now I've got some good detail down at the bottom. I've almost got a silhouette there. So I've got something to work with, and I've got a nice, relatively clear background. You can see that I have some blue up in the corner here, but that really shouldn't be much of a problem. And that's what I'm going to use for my background image. And so what I'll do is I'll hit P on the keyboard, and I'll flag this image as a pick. In Lightroom, there are different attributes that you can assign to images. One of them is that I can pick. If I'm going through a series of, 100 or 1,000 pictures that I just shot, probably 2 of them are good, or at least worth looking at. So I can quickly scan using Lightroom through there, and as I find the ones that I like, I can hit P on each one of those. This is a Lightroom thing, okay? I'm going to go back to my grid, and I can go here to Attribute and say I only want to see those that I picked. Okay, see that little white flag? That's a pick. This one is picked. That one's picked. This is the only one that I just recently picked. But it's a way for me to do a temporary set of pictures, images that I want to work with. So I'm going to unflag that. And let's see, what are the other images that I want to work with? Go away. All right. I know that in order to get to this, I'm going to use the experience that I used. I know I want this one here as the kind of border. And I want this as a texture. And I want this as the sky. And I want some birds. And yeah, that one's good. Okay. So now if I just go back to these, I've got birds, sky, texture, matting, and primary image. I'm going to pick those. I'm going to select them, right? Again, you see those are highlighted, so I've selected them. And I'm just going to take all those into Photoshop, right? So Pretty simple to do. Bring up my menu, edit in Photoshop. And what I'll end up with here are discrete images, not layers. I did not open these as layers because I'm not ready to stack them yet. I'm bringing them in, and I'm going to bring them in with adjustments. And the only reason that I'm doing that is because I did make adjustments that I want to keep in this one here. The other ones, I didn't make any adjustments to, so they're going to come in as what? What kind of files are they going to come in as? Well, they're going to come in as JPEG, mostly because they are JPEGs. You see this right here? But you're right, if they were RAW, they would have come in as JPEGs. Okay? Because I said I want it with adjustment. Okay? And with adjustment means any kind of adjustment. And the only one I did, as I said, was the background image. If I wanted to bring them in as TIFFs or as RAW files, I would have said as a copy or as original. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to edit that. Now bring up Photoshop, and it'll stack all of these over here. And there's two ways to handle this process right here. One of them is what I'm just doing right now. And that's putting all the images individually into Photoshop. The other is if you know that you're going to add images to this, or you're going to do additional editing, or if you're not using Lightroom, what I would suggest is creating a folder on the desktop or wherever you want to do it, but then putting copies of those images in that folder, because then you have a known place that these things are being stored. Okay? Because we'll get down the road here, we'll get to this as we get through this process here, we're going to be saving as. Normal process of editing an image in Photoshop out of Lightroom, once you make your change in that single image and you save it, you're not going to save it as, you're just going to save it. If I did the function I just did, edit in Photoshop as a copy of Lightroom, it created another image, another record in the Lightroom database, and another physical file in the same place that the original was. If I finish my Photoshop edits and save it, it comes back into Lightroom, and there it is. Okay, it's right next to the other one that I had created. If I save as, okay, I've made a bunch of changes, and I really don't want to save over the original, because it just is not the original. If I did a save as, Photoshop isn't necessarily going to save that image in the same place. It might, okay, but you know how this stuff works. Save as, and it gives you the reference bar, and you don't look at it because you don't look at it. So you hit OK, and it saves it as, and you go back into Lightroom, and where is that? Okay, so Lightroom knows the naming sequence, and it knows that the file that you did a save, just a close and save, is already part of the database record. It already knows where it is. If I do a save as, I probably gave it a different name, because save as is give it a different name. Okay, Lightroom has no idea about that name. It doesn't know that it exists. It wasn't there previously. Chances are it's in the same folder that the other ones are, because that's kind of the way this stuff works, but it's not in Lightroom. Okay? So at that point, that's why you want to know where you put your stuff. Right? So that's one reason for keeping a separate folder of your images, because it's there. If you didn't do that, and you just do what I did, chances are that image is saved with a different name in the same folder, and then you would do what's called a resync of your folders in Lightroom. I'm not going to do that right now, because it's kind of past the point, okay? But, so the message here is the safest way to do all this is to create a new folder, put everything in there, work on it. I'm not practicing what I preach with this one right here. Okay, so now we've got this image here. And you can see we have that one. I've got my box. I've got clouds. It's a texture. These things are available. If you look at your syllabus, you'll see that there's a folder on that I put up in Dropbox that has a whole bunch of these texture images. And I think there are some of these. Did you look at them? I think there are. But there are lots of places to get these things. Just search for textures. Okay? Yeah, I mean, they're everywhere. And a lot of them are free, and there are a lot of them that are not. The ones that are not free are actually best because you can pretty much count on the fact that they are high enough resolution. The images are big enough. They're usually 4,000 by whatever. And that means that you can always downsample them and they'll fit in whatever project. A lot of the ones that I've found are not. I mean, they're great images and you can work with them, but they're, 600 pixels by whatever. And so at the point that you figure that out, it's too late. Because you put it on your screen and it's all bitmapped and, oh, this is no good, but I really like the layout of it. Okay, so here's my images. So let's go first to this one. And, it's okay. Essentially, it has the elements that I want in it. It looks like it's going to tell a story, or at least a feeling or a thought. But what I really want to do is I want to replace this background sky. So what I will, let's see, I want to put that in it. Now we've got some unique issues here. The trees, okay, the buildings they don't fit. But what I really want is right down to here. Okay? And so what do I do with all this stuff? Good question. And the sun, should come up kind of beyond that. All right. First rule, make a copy. Control J makes a copy of the background. Now I can work with this copy and I can do anything that I want to and still have a safety net. Here's my clouds, and I'm going to place this layer, I'm going to place this image as a new layer on the other image. There are a lot of ways to do that, but the way that I like to do it is, well, that wasn't good. Okay, set the V for move. I'm going to take this right here, I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to drag it up to my image here. See it switched, and then I'm going to drop it. Okay. Now, what do I know about this? This is one of those, right? This is one of those 640K images. Is it going to be okay? Well, yes.
What you did is you copied the background layer onto this, you copied the sun layer.
Right, I did a drag and drop. So, sure. Yeah, that's a cool trick, I'll tell you. Like I said, there's a lot of ways to do it, but this one is pretty good. All right, so here's my image. I know that this one over here, the Gettysburg image, is the one I want to put it on. So I'm going to go over to this. I'm going to just click on this and hold down the key, the left click. I'm going to drag it to the image that I want it to appear on. You see it swapped over. And now I'm going to drag it into the image and drop it.
So you just left mouse click.
Drag it up, then drag it down. You have to drag it down, otherwise it just replaces that image, and that's really not what you want to do. You want to create a new layer. Okay.
Could you do a select all copy paste?
Could, yep. There's, a few ways to do it, but yes, that's one way to do it. Yeah, I'm not going to get into the other stuff here. Okay, so now I've got this image here. What can I do with that? Well, it's too small. So what do you do? How do you manipulate a small image and make it bigger in Photoshop? Free transform, okay? Free transform. Control T. So I'm on that layer. I've selected that layer. And I'll hit Control T and I free transform. And now, let's see. So you can see that it's getting very weird, okay? So I'm going to escape out of that, and I'm going to select it, Control T for transform. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, maintain aspect ratio, right? And now I'm going to drag it, and you see that it does. The Shift key. The Shift key is the same key that in Lightroom, if you hold it down and you do a drag, it maintains horizontal or vertical, whereas if you don't, it kind of gets wonky. All right, we'll do the same thing over here. Just get it out to about the size that I want. And you can see it looks pretty pixelated, right? Well, it actually gets fixed pretty well when I hit enter in it. So Photoshop does a pretty nice job of filling in the pixels. It's not great, but again, I'm not looking for, highly detailed, high resolution results here, because I'm going to put layers on top of this that are going to not destroy, but all right. But I still have these problems here. I've got the trees and the buildings that I want to get rid of. So what can I do? I can crop it, right? So I can hit the crop over here. And what do I get? Oops. I get to crop the whole image. Yeah. Not what I want, right? Okay. So that's not good. So this is not what I want to do. So now I'm going to introduce you to yet another feature, which is called Smart Objects. I think somebody talked about smart images before in the last class. I always wondered, what good is a smart object? Really, and then somebody introduced this concept to me exactly with this kind of a problem. A smart object is an object that can be edited individually and maintains the connection to where it is. So for instance, right now, if I want to edit this layer right here, I will need to bring that into, I either need to go back over to this window over here, right, and edit it. But I really don't want to mess with that image. I want to use the one that I've got. So I'm going to go over to this and select that layer and bring up the menu and, oops, right there, convert to a smart object. It's the right-click menu on the layer. Right-click, convert to smart object. And it does a little bit of magic. I have no idea what it's doing. But when it gets done, what you'll see is that. Okay? You see that little box right there? So it's indicating on the layer that this is a smart object.
And that means?
It means this. I want to crop that. Okay? So what I do here is I will double click on that layer. I'm sorry, on the image. Pardon? Yes, I can do anything I want to on it by itself.
But it won't mess up the file you got sitting up there.
Right, right.
Okay.
All right. So this is going to open up. There's my image again. So here's, but notice the name of it, Layer 2. All right. So it's not the image that I started with, the clouds, which is still over here, right? There it is. Here's layer 2. Okay. Pardon? Close. Yeah, I could. Yep. Yeah, since we're done with that. Yeah, so we brought that in. So yes, good idea. I'll close that one. Don't want to. Okay. So here's this layer, and let's just do a little bit of work on this. I'm going to now crop it. And now when I crop it, my handles are in the right place. So I'm going to grab this, and I'm just going to pull it up. Oops, not quite that far. Okay, right. We'll just do it right there. And then I'll commit with the check mark or with enter. Now, just since we're cropping, let's just talk about what happened here. In Photoshop, what I've done is I have removed pixels. All right, Photoshop by nature is a destructive application. I don't mean that in the negative sense, but it's destroying. I just got rid of those pixels. They are gone, and if I save it like this, then those pixels are gone forever from this version of the image. As opposed to in Lightroom, when I crop, I'm just making a selection of that area and I'm hiding the pixels. So in Lightroom, if I had done this, I could go back and get those at any time in the future because they're not really gone, they're just hidden. Aside from the point, but. Okay, so now I've cropped this, I've got this, but I need a little bit more space down here. So let's do this. Let's crop again. I've got my handles. And at this point, I'm going to bring it down. Did you know you could reverse crop? Okay. What does it do? It adds to the canvas is actually technically what it's doing. And you can do this in a few different ways. There's an edit where you can change the size of the canvas, but I think this is just easier to do. Okay. But there's nothing in there, so I'm going to enter, and then I will make a selection. Let's just take this.
What's this? Can't see very well.
Okay, what I did was I took the marquee box up there, and I just made a selection of that and this. All right. And then I'm going to use, where is it? Well, let's do something different. Let's not do that. I'll deselect that, and I'll use Edit, Content Aware Scale. I was going to use the Content Aware Fill, okay, which is really kind of the same thing, but I'm going to use Content Aware Scale. Content Aware is a feature in Photoshop that says, I want to fill in the space with something that makes sense, right? Not just white. Lightroom has a version of that in the brushes that it will kind of, sort of guess at what you want to fill things with. If you do you take the brush and you paint over something and you want to either heal it or clone it. It's really healing and cloning. It's really not content aware. So we're going to content aware scale, and I'm just going to drag this little bar down here. And let's see what happens. Nothing. Okay.
So it stretched the upper part of the image?
It did stretch it. Yep. So it did stretch. So it's a little bit better. It is much better, although you can't tell it with this, than just free transform. Because free transform would do the same thing. It would be hard to tell the difference in this. Okay. All right. So we're going to leave it like that because that's okay. If I had done the other, which was to create the blank space and try to content aware fill, it probably would not have looked as good. Truthfully, it would have, kind of copied some clouds that were not necessarily right. This gives me a nice clean look.
So it takes you the same thing, just rescales it. The other one makes up pixels
the content aware.
Just the pixels.
Right. And again, I could have probably, for this particular image, I probably could have used free transform. It probably would have looked identical to this. But in a more complicated image, this is, the content aware is much more accurate. So there's my change. You notice that it's a single layer, okay? It's called layer 2. And now I can simply close this, I think. I think it's still thinking. All right, so what I'll be able to do then is I will be able to close this. There it is, save it, yes.
What is that? Why is it doing that?
Why did it ask me if I wanted to save it? The sound?
Yeah.
Oh, it just, because I hit the mouse too many times.
Okay.
Right.
Is it different sound?
Yeah.
Change
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah. Okay. Bingo, huh? All right. So what did I do here? I created, I took an image and I laid it as another layer on top of my background image. I wanted to edit it. I needed more space. So I turned it into a smart object. Double click on the object. It opens it in another window in Photoshop. And I can use literally any Photoshop tools on that layer. Once I'm done with that, I closed it. It asked me if I wanted to save. I saved it, and bingo, there it is. And it's still called here layer 2. You see that? Over here, layer 2. And it looks kind of weird, okay? This is not really the transition that I want. So I'm going to start on moving this and making the transition before we take a break, because that'll take a while. Okay, so what do? I want, actually the sky is behind the foreground, right? I mean, literally the sky is behind the foreground. In the layers, it should be behind the foreground, but it's not. So I'm going to take this layer and drag it. Okay? It's gone. Below. Yeah, and let's just do this. I'm going to do what I should have done in the first place. I'll rename this. So layer 2 really should be clouds. And this one is foreground. Okay, so now I can, by looking at the layers and the names, I can really tell what's going on.
What did you do there? You dragged the cloud layer
Below,
below.
right? So I'll put it back the way it was. Click on the layer I want to move, hold down the left mouse, and just drag it where you want it. That's what I did. Okay. So the foreground is up here, and I know that that background is back there. The sky is behind it, but I really obviously can't see it. So there are a couple ways to look and see what I'm doing, and I can reveal that. The easiest way, most directly, is to change the opacity. And that's kind of temporary, right? Because that's not the effect that I want. But it does give me a way to view what I'm doing. All right, so let's take the clouds. I'll click on the clouds. And now when I have the move key, the move function, which is the shortcut for move is V, M-O-V-E, right? And I've got my little four-way crosshairs. Now I can actually drag that around. So I'll click on, I'm on the clouds, go back here, hold down the key, and I can drag it to where I think I want it. I want it a little bit below the horizon so that I can make sense of it. Okay?
Tell me the shortcut key.
V is the move key. That's this one right up here, top corner.
What did you change the transparency to?
I changed it to, well, the right answer is I changed it to whatever worked, right? Because, yeah, I just wanted to be able to see what was there. So it's probably around 60% or something. But whatever allows you to see enough of the details that you want, 47%. Okay. But so now I can see it for working purposes, but I really can't use it that way because I still have my hard line there. I'm still, this is much too light because it's only an opacity of 47%. So let's take this back up to take it back to 100%. By the way, you can change these things just by typing in them, if you, okay? Or you can slide the numbers. Now, there's a couple ways to get rid of the sky. And we'll talk about one of them quickly, and then we'll talk about doing a selection and a mask, okay? Because that's the important stuff in terms of being able to get rid of parts of images that you don't want. So the quick way that may or may not work is to change your blending mode. For images like this that have very light areas, blending modes work pretty well, or can. So I'm on the foreground image, and I want to change. I click on the blending mode so that I've got the little blue marquee there. And at this point, I can use my down arrow to cycle through the blending modes. Okay, that one's darken, multiply. Now you see what's happening here. Okay, that one, that works pretty well actually. But when I move to multiply, what's happened? The blending mode is affecting the entire layer, not just that section. Okay? So we can continue to cycle through and we'll get some, interesting and some weird. Darker color, lighten screen, linear dodge, lighter color, overlay. So a couple of them work pretty well. All right? So let's go back up to one that worked pretty well. That one, darker color and linear burn. Both of those work. No, darker color works pretty good. So maybe for the image you're working on, that's acceptable. Right? It certainly can be. Maybe not. So I'm going to quit with this, and we'll take a little break, and let me figure out where we're going to go next. Yes.
When you import 5 or 6 images in,
Yes.
a background, a texture, an overlay, whatever, you have to, in your mind, sort of do a quick assessment. I think this is what these 5 images are going to give me. So
Good question, right. If I go into Lightroom and I've pre-selected the images that I want to work with, that means that I probably have a preview. I visualize what I want to accomplish. In this case, because I'm doing this for you all, and I've already actually done this image, I do have an idea what I want to do. When I started this image, I had no idea at all. So I did not pre-select my images out of Lightroom. No, I brought in one, and then I looked for a sky, and then I looked for, and so I brought those in independently. So yes, and for me, my workflow is pretty much gee, what am I going to do? Right? I very rarely have a preconceived idea of the image you want. I'm going to, while we're in break here, I'm going to bring up Aaron Summeling's stuff here so you can take a look at that. It's pretty impressive. It's not me, but it's amazing stuff. Okay, let's just take a few minutes. Thanks. If folks are taking notes in here, and if I turn the lights off, it'll make it almost impossible. So I'm kind of reluctant to do that, even though it makes it easier to see. So what's the choice? You want to take notes, I think, right? Yeah. So is this light better than the other one? Oh, is this?
That's fine.
Turn it down.
Turn them all down?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, that's better.
We'll figure it
All right, okay. Okay, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but this guy is amazing. This is Adrian Summeling, and he sells workshops, which I have been tempted to take, except that there's no way I'm going to be able to do these because these are all conceptual. And as we were just talking before we broke, I kind of start out with, okay, here's an image I want to work with, but I have no idea where I'm going to go with it. This, I mean, look at this, and I can tell you from looking at some of his, he does walkthroughs on these. Every piece of this is a separate image. So the kid, the woman, the bench, the bird, certainly the elephant, probably the trees, probably the background. All of those are separate, and the masking and selection that he does are just amazing. So I'll just kind of run through a few of these.
You can hear the mother saying, yay.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Right, honey, right.
Yep. So interesting stuff. Okay, but
Oh, you go so fast, they're wonderful.
yeah. If you want to write down, it's Adrian Summeling. Sommeling. Yeah. Yeah, amazing.
And all the separate images are things he shot in his camera then? Or?
Yeah, in fact, if you take some time and look at those, you'll notice that the kids are his kids, because you see them in every shot. And it's him and his wife and his kids. I don't think the elephant is his.
Not sure.
But yeah, but he goes through and he shows, like he's got that one of the kid that's being dragged by his father. He shows that the kid is actually on a gurney, and he shows the lighting setup and the background and how he selects and all that kind of. It's really educational, and so that's what we're doing here, kind of. All right, so this is one way of doing a pass-through. So what we've done here is I still have the opacity at 100% on this, and we're dealing with the foreground image, and I've changed the blend mode to one that actually allows the background to come through, because the background of this image, if I turn off the clouds, remember if you click the eyeball on these things, it turns off the visibility on that layer.
Oh, wait, so the top of the cornfield looks a little darker than the rest.
Right here?
The-
Oh, right, you mean
the
from here to
strip-
here?
There's a strip of cornfield that looks darker than the rest. It's about
Yep,
1/6 of the
yep,
image on the
I see,
bottom.
right here.
Yeah.
Right.
And I thought it was part of the other picture, but it's not.
It's not, that's actually kind of the way it's the way the corn was at that point.
Okay.
So I've got this at, if I change it back to normal, you can see that image itself really does not change. What's changed is, turn the cloud layer back on, and I changed the blend mode to darken, and the background image shows up.
So Scott, if you ran a selection on the white sky and basically just deleted it completely, the color on that sky might be slightly different.
Exactly.
than the resultant of the blending mode.
Right, exactly right.
So you have that option.
Right, so there are, in fact, that's where we're going to go. There are different options for revealing the layers beneath. Blend modes are just spectacular. They really do a lot. And I'm going to take the blend mode one step farther. In fact, I'm going to turn this back to normal. And I'm going to take the background and I'm going to apply a layer style to it. Okay, now I got here by, I've selected the background image, the foreground image, and I just double click on the bar. And if you ever used the text function in Photoshop, when you want to do a drop shadow, that kind of thing, that's where all this stuff lives here. But what I'm interested in is this right here, blend if. Blend if does a different kind of magic. So just to kind of go through this panel, we have our blending modes, which these are the same blending modes that we just worked with previously, okay? So I can select that here. But I'm going to bypass that at the moment. I'm going to use the blend if gray. The top one here says this layer, so it's the one I'm on, or the underlying layer. So if I wanted to affect, for instance, in this case, the clouds, okay, I could use this one here. Most cases, in my experience, the top layer, the layer that I've selected, is the one I want to use. So I'm going to take this little indicator here, and I'm just going to click on it, hold down my key, and I'm going to drag it across here. You see what's going on? Do that a little bit more.
Why the term blend if?
It's saying blend this layer with the background if the color of gray is 177. You know, colors are 0 to 254, right? 255. So at 127, blend it. All right. So if the color value is that level, blend it with what's beyond. Let that background come through.
Real quickly.
Yes.
Back and tell me how you got
Okay, sure, sure. I don't want to cut that out. All right, I'm going to go back here, put that back, cancel this. All right, we got here by, I'm selected, the foreground image is selected, that layer. Double click on the bar. You see where that bar is? Double click it. Right here, okay, it's right over here. Foreground. Be sure that you're selecting, you know, that you're on the layer that you want to affect. Double click it and bring that up. Okay. And then, quick and dirty, and I say quick and dirty because there's yet another level to this. Hold down the left mouse button and drag the indicator down until it reveals. Okay. Now, you can go fairly far with this particular image. Look at what's, I don't know if you can see, the top levels of the corn there. You see that? It's kind of highlighted. As I continue to drag down, I can get rid of that. You see it?
Yep.
But also, look what's going on behind it. See, the rest of the corn is, so I'm beginning to get to the point where that value doesn't work exactly right. So I'm going to bring this back up here. And then I'm going to do one more little trick. I'm going to hold down the control key. Is it the control key? And click on here. No. Alt key. I get those confused. Alt key. And see what happened? It split. You see that? My little... Now I've got a little bit more control. And you notice that I still have a little fringing around the corn, but it's not as pronounced. Okay?
I'm sorry, Scott. So you held the old key and clicked at the line, so to speak, that you want to limit it to?
I'll do that again. Okay, so I just click on that, on the little marker. Okay, Alt, click, and now as that didn't do it right. You have to be on the side you want. On the side, on the right side in this case, I'm sorry, left side of the marker. And start to drag it down. Once you've separated them, you can just drag it, okay, until you get what you want. So I'll drag that down fairly far. Now I still have control over this one here, and I can drag that one. Oh, look at that. Huh. So what I'm finding is that the value between 104 and 139 is actually must be the value of that gray, that, you know, that space that's back there. So that's pretty good.
Too narrow the margin. Is that what you're doing? You're saying, I only want between 100 and 127.
Right, exactly.
But splitting it with the alt key, I'm not sure I understand.
What you're doing is you're taking control of the upper and lower ranges of the value, right? Rather than just, you know, one single value as a cutoff point. Okay.
What's the bar? There's a slider below that.
The one below it, this one right here, is the underlying layer. So if I wanted to affect the sky rather than the foreground, I would drag that back and forth. I've tried that several times on different images. It doesn't seem to do anything for me. I'm sure that it's in graphic arts work. There's some.
What blending mode are you using?
And this one is normal. This is normal blending mode, so I'm not even trying to get darker. So in best case scenario is to use normal, because then you're not, remember the blending mode affects the entire layer. So in this case, if I had changed blending mode, I would also be affecting the corn area. And I don't really want to at this point, so.
We could do it just to show the.
Sure.
One more question. The color, you can select what color you want to replace the people, correct? You using gray to work, I could change that and say this.
Red, green, blue, or gray, right. Right. Yeah, we're using an RGB palette, so yes. All right, yeah, let's just change the underlying layer here from the white light values. Okay, and you see what's happening here. It's, oh, look at that, just the kid disappeared. There are days, right? And I'm sure that we could get some different selections, but for my photographic images, the underlying layer bar doesn't seem to do anything that I want. Okay, so that's one. So first of all, we checked and we covered the blend mode as a way of getting rid of light areas. When I talk about that, one of the reasons I picked this image is because images with large areas of light or white work very well, because it's easier to eliminate them. It's easier to replace those portions with other images or with other values. So we tried blending modes, and we got some pretty good results from one of those. And now we've tried blend if, and that works exceptionally well, actually. I would almost use that. I like the way that it's, the transition in the corn is pretty good. I really don't see too much fringing up there. The shadow of the child looks pretty good. And I haven't affected the corn in this image at all by using this method. But,
What's your subject?
I mean, what am I trying to express? I don't know, I thought it was an interesting picture. I mean, but that's a good question, because like I said, the guy that we were just talking about, Summerling, he's got a very definite idea of what he wants to express. When I start on one of these things, I say, oh, that looks like a neat image. Okay, but I want to do something with it. And most of the time, I really don't know what that something is. But I looked at this one and I said, okay, well, that sky is awful, so let's replace the sky. Okay. And then sometimes I'll look at an image and I'll say, well, there's some defects here and I really want to hide those. Okay, the corn I'm not really crazy about. I mean, I like the vertical pattern, but this is kind of, eh. So, and then I'll look for an element that will fix that. In this one here, for instance, there's some blank space up there and I'd like to fill that up. So we'll get to that.
You could cut that off the foreground and make it even better.
I could, yep. Okay, so we're now going to, I'm going to get rid of this. So see this little box right here? Indicates a layer has advanced blending options. That's the blend if. So I want to get rid of that. So I will go back here.
How would you get it back?
How would I get it back? I could just go back in and redo it right here.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but I'm going to get rid of them because I don't want to. I want to go on to the next way to get rid of the background, which is the selection. Okay. We talked about the different programs that have the ability to select. ON1's got one. Topaz has one. There are some single single programs that really do great jobs, but Photoshop just does an amazing job. I mean, they are kind of the kings. So I'm going to pick one way to do it here, and there are many. I can use lasso, okay, I can draw lines around stuff, I can have Photoshop automatically detect the edges, and we'll look at that. So right here, we have Quick Select. Okay, that's the Quick Selection tool. Looks like a brush. And I'm just going to go in here, and I'm going to start drawing. Oop, look at that. So what it's done is drawn a marquee around everything that was light. Looks like it did a pretty good job around the kid. Around the corn here, I can see that there are stalks still sticking up, but it's done a decent job of kind of selecting it. But not a great job. So, I really, even though I'm not all that concerned with the real specific detail, I do want it to still look like, you know, corn stalks sticking up. So I'm going to use this tool right here called Refine Edge. It's right up at the top, or it was until I clicked on it. Brings up this. And so it highlights what's been selected. So I want to check the edge detection here, and I want to bring up the radius of it. And we can click on this little button right here. It says Show Radius. And you can start to see around the corn. It's tough because it's pretty small. I'm going to take this right here. This is the Refine Radius tool. Right there. And I'm just going to brush. I'm going to use the right bracket tool key, I think. I'm going to paint around there. You see how it's painting? So I'm instructing Photoshop to look at this area and do a better job.
What is the right bracket?
Right bracket expands the size of the brush.
Yeah, I know it does. Where is it?
On the keyboard. Keyboard?
Oh, it's just the bracket.
Yeah, the bracket key.
You said tool.
Oh, yeah. Right bracket tool. That's the one on your workbench. There it goes. I like that tune.
Got quite a repertoire.
All right, so now I'm going along here and I'm going to refine that edge. Yep, you do all this. Okay. So now I've refined the selection. It's hard to see, but the stalks are sticking up, so it's done a much better job of picking the detail.
So the radius increases the number of pixels out?
It's the size of the brush that you're painting with. That's all.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Using the right bracket key increases the size of the brush you're painting with. This one over here, Smart Radius, or the radius increases the number of pixels it's looking at. Yes, exactly. Sorry. And you can change up here your view so that you can see. Okay, that makes it a lot clearer. Right?
So the red has not been selected.
You know, here's one of the things that I get confused about. When I used my selection tool, I painted the white, right? So you would think that that's what I selected. right? So that would be the mask. So that becomes the mask. In actuality, I want that, yes, I want that to be the mask and this to be the active, remaining portion. So let's just, we'll assume that that's what's going to happen here. And I'll turn off the little drop down. And down here we want to, when I'm done now, what do I want to happen? I want to output this. I want to keep it. So I can output to a selection, okay, which is just the lines. I can output to a layer mask, which means now I've got something that I can use as a mask. A mask, by the way, is the result of a selection. So you can make a selection, but if you make a selection and just output the selection, what you have is just a line, okay, or a group of lines that says this area. A mask is a bitmap image, okay, it actually is another image that is the result of a selection. So we can output to a layer mask, to a new layer, to a layer with a layer mask, to a new, so whatever you want to do with it. In this case, I want to put it with a layer, a new layer with a layer mask. Remember, as we're dealing with layers, I want to keep as many layers as I need so that I can always return to them. New layer with a mask, okay. And you'll see over on that side, I now have, okay, what happened? The opposite of what I wanted, right? So what I have on this side here is, if you can see it, the black is the bitmap image of the bottom. It's not what I wanted. What I wanted was the bitmap image of the top. So I'm going to undo that, Control Z. Yeah, you can go to history. I only want to go back one step though, so Control Z works okay. So cancel this, and I want to invert this selection. So select up here at the top, inverse, or Control Shift I, or Command Shift I. Now I've selected that. Go back to Refine Edge, and we'll repaint. And let's just do this again here. Okay. So there's the third way to get your layers displayed. I'm not completely happy with that because you can still see some kind of fringing up here. That's a matter of changing the layers and going back into the refine edge, which I just didn't take the time to do. All right?
Question.
Yes?
Why did you level the picture up before we started? That sort of bothers me because that's a flat field.
Maybe it's on the hill.
I mean, before you started everything,
Oh, you mean the horizon's not level? Ah, okay. Fair.
You had normally done that before you started manipulating everything.
Yeah. I mean, I agree.
I just want to, it just sort of bothered me because I know it's a flat field.
Well, we can still do that. So, is that better? Actually, Lightroom probably would have done a better job of that because I could just hit level, right? Okay. And I've got some edges around there. We'll deal with that later. Any other questions about these? Okay, we covered three steps here, three processes or methods of eliminating a lighter area. The first one is the blend mode, okay, which we used, and we found out that darker, in this case, works pretty well. And then we looked at the blend if options, so blend if gray, and being able to toggle the switches, the range till you get the range. And then this one here, which is actually selecting. We'll do more with selecting later and do a better job of getting exactly the detail that we want. But for now, we've got the ability to select, to refine the edge. And refine edge is probably the most important piece of that. As you get into selecting the areas, go in and spend some time fiddling with the refine edge brush. Being able to see the layer using the red, or there are different overlays that you can use in order to visualize it better. So use those. Oh, we're almost out, aren't we? 10:20. Okay. We'll do one more thing here. Let's do the birds. Okay. So I'm going to, we could edit this where it is, or we can do the same trick we did before with the smart object. So let's use that one, because I like doing that. So I'm going to point to the background and drag that up into this image here, and then drag it into the image. First thing I'm going to do with this is to turn it into a smart image. Right click right here somewhere. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Convert to smart object. And then we'll open it so that I can do, because what do I want to do? Again, I want to get rid of the background on these. We'll just do a quick, actually this time we'll use the select color range. So the previous selection I did was by using the quick select tool, which would work here as well. This one I'm going to use the color range, even though I'm going to have some problems because I've got blue and I've got gray. I've got white in here, so, but we'll use that. And here's my control panel for the selection tool. And I'll start picking colors. And what I'll want to do is add to. So when I first click, I'm picking this color. And you'll see that the preview down here is saying, okay, here's what you picked, the white stuff. Well, that's good, but I also want to pick some of the other. So I'm going to hit this little eyedropper and hit the add to sample so that now I can pick multiple colors. Oh, we're getting better. Pretty good. Okay, close enough. You can select the fuzziness, you know, how close do you really want to be? So if we look at this, we'll see that, okay, in this bird right here, I've selected that wing. I really don't want to get that as a selection because I really want to keep that. But we'll keep that anyhow. All right, and we'll hit OK. And if I hit delete, I've gotten rid of pretty much everything I want. A pretty rough selection here. Control D deselects. Use my marquee tool here to draw around the portion, because I could get rid of the blue, but I don't really care to. I don't really want to. I'm just going to pick this guy right here. And then I'm going to hold down the Shift key and pick these guys. hold down the Shift key and pick these guys. Hold down the Shift key and pick this guy. And select what did I do? I got rid of them. So Shift key, if you I probably can't see it there, my little crosshair cursor, if I hold down the Shift key, it adds a plus sign to it, which means I'm going to add to my selections. Okay. And we'll copy that out. And I want to Control Shift inverse. Control Shift, Control Alt inverse. Nope. All right, so I didn't do it. But what I would want, what I wanted to do was to reverse the selection and then delete. Okay, that would have deleted my background again rather than my birds. So, but I didn't do it, and we're out of time. But you can see where we're going with this. I'm going to pick some birds. I'm going to layer them in. I actually, in the final image, I layered them in twice, so I had more birds than I have this. And yeah, well, yes, I used the size transform to make them appropriate. We'll do that next time, so we'll get to the right size and the right layers.
So you could bring them in individually to put them in different places.
Correct. Correct. Yep, change the flock formation and that kind of thing. Yep, I did. All righty, well, thank you. I get the light on here.